Build your better breakfast at Subway with the tasty 250 combo, a 16-ounce cup of freshly brewed Seattle's best coffee, and any delicious egg muffin melt. And don't hit the snooze on this deal. Right now, come in before 11 a.m. for a $5 foot-long breakfast sub. Subway, eat fresh. The BS Report is a free-flowing conversation that occasionally touches on mature subjects.
First of all,
This is the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
it might be cool, I don't know. And if it's not, I don't care.
The BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Bill Simmons works for ESPN. He's also named the sports guy, and he writes a comical sports column. He must be a popular dude.
The BS Report.
It's got a real dirty sound, like a rusty steak knife cutting through a well-aged steak.
Now.
Here's Bill Simmons.
Welcome to BS Report, Part 2 of our conversation with ESPN's Marc Stein and the Subway Fresh Take Hotline. And now, bringing in my buddy House, we're going to turn this into a menage-a-pod. Let's hit it.
Joe House.
What's happening?
What is happening?
Steiny Mo and I are talking about Miami.
Steiny Mo!
Yeah, we were doing a pod, and we figured, well, who's the natural person to bring in for a third man? And so,
You
continuing
beat up
Bucher's
Bucher.
band, you got the call.
You beat up
Wow.
Bucher.
Third.
So,
I would have thought I fit in 10th.
rush to judgment for Miami, or are you legitimately concerned about whether this team is even a second-round playoff team?
I'm not legitimately concerned about them being a second-round playoff team, but I am legitimately concerned about the way that this experiment is looking right now.
You talking about Wade playing with LeBron?
Yes. Yes. At the same time, they still haven't sorted out who's going to get the ball when. Eddie House is taking the clutch shots at the end of games. It's a little concerning.
You don't like the Eddie House part?
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like, if you just, we all thought, they have three of the best 20 players in the league. This is going to work out great. But it's kind of the wrong match of the three. For instance, if it was Nash, Wade, and Dwight Howard, I think that would be unstoppable, right?
Yeah, that would be a great three.
But this particular threesome.
Well, why did they choose Bosch? I mean, they could have done Boozer. They could have done Amari.
Yeah, and that wouldn't have changed the basic issue of this team, which is that they can't defend the rim. Like Roy Hibbert is scoring on this team. No offense to Roy Hibbert. I actually kind of like him, but it just seems like when they play the Lakers and when they play the Celtics again, it just doesn't seem like they're in the game. Like, I thought it was really interesting that in both Celtic games.
But they weren't going to have that anyway. The issue is that their offense isn't good either. I mean,
right.
I'm just thinking, fix the offense first. I mean, their key to beating Boston anyway was we have to be unguardable. And They are not unguardable right now.
Well, what do you think Don Nelson would have done with this team? Because that's really and I wrote this for the year, they've created the greatest Don Nelson team of all time.
That's a good point. I need to call him and ask him.
But maybe only
that's a good column for you, Stein.
Why are you saying this out loud?
Do it right now. Call him. He's your guy anyway. You were his last defender when he was rotting away on that Golden State bench.
Isn't it that sounds good to me? Kind of only in theory, though. I'm not sure, having watched them play, that the super speed tempo is right for this set of guys, because it's really only right to me for Wade and LeBron, and not any of the rest of the players on that team.
Not for Bosch?
Has he ever played in an up-tempo scenario? I haven't seen anything out of him that makes me, Well,
and this is the big problem for him. I mean, he's clearly, when you look at him, I mean, there are a lot of guys in this league. You go around, you talk to coaches, assistant coaches, whatever. They'll tell you, player X is no good unless he's got his offense going, and it's so clear that he feels so lost in the offense that it's messed up everything else, because he's never been a great defender, but rebounding, shot blocking, those are activity things, and it's just he's not playing with energy because he feels, I mean, he clearly has not adapted to just not having the ball in his hands and spotting up and playing on the weak side and all that stuff, and that's something they got to figure out, because he's got to at least board like a beast for them. I mean, he's always been kind of an overrated defender, but shot blocking and rebounding, they've got to have that from him, and he's not bringing that at all.
I don't even know if he's that. I don't even know if he has it in him. There's a advanced basketball stat that I like, and I don't like a lot of them, but I like this one, where I think it's called usage rate, where somebody's the number of possessions that somebody's involved in. And I saw this somewhere that Bosch, like in Toronto, he was involved in like 31% of the possessions. And then in Miami now it's like 20%. So if you prorate his stats for that 20% in Miami to what the 30% would have been if they used him more, it would basically be what his Toronto stats were. But that's been the interesting thing is you have these three guys that were all the main possession guy in their teams, and now they're all kind of alternating it. And I don't know if you figured this out. Like, I really almost feel like I think the move will eventually be to trade Bosch for multiple pieces.
That's not going to happen this season, though, right?
No, this summer.
No chance. I mean, even if it makes sense, there's no way they admit defeat this quickly. I mean, they got to at least give it.
All right, you say, hold on, though. You say no chance, but let's say it's February 8th, and the Heat is 24-20, something, or 23-20, something like that. And you get a call, Bosch is on the move. It's a 50% chance. You're telling me you'd be shocked by that?
Yeah, in year one I would.
Really? You'd be shocked?
Well, I mean, look, it's the NBA. Nothing shocks you.
It's Pat Riley. He would trade his wife.
But isn't the point here that we're seeing it play out before our eyes? Chemistry matters. You can't just throw guys together, and so trading Bosch.
I know, but again, we've seen 15 games for a team that had no training camp. The year that Miami won it, they lived through this whole thing. I mean, how bad was that team all year long? Not only did they barely win 50 games, I mean, remember their record against, I can't remember these things because I'm getting old, but I just remember they were like 0-8 against any division-leading team. I mean, they didn't beat anybody good all year long, and then it all clicked in the playoffs. So
yeah, I agree with you, Stein. I'm making the same point. I don't think that they would trade Bosch in February because they can't afford to, inject a new kind of equation into the chemistry. They already have chemistry things they're trying to solve for.
You're Mr. Trade Machine Picasso. What would it take for them to give up Bosch, halfway through year one?
All right,
I mean,
we know
what killer offer are they going to? I mean, it's too soon.
I haven't talked to Dork Elvis because he's just been living in a log cabin, chain smoking. But let's say in February the Rockets are way out of it, and they call Miami and they say, we'll give you Luis Scola, Shane Battier, and Kyle Lowry, and one of the Knicks picks for Bosch. You're telling me Miami wouldn't think about that?
Well, especially if you throw a pick in there, you have to think about it.
And if you're Darryl, this is your one chance to get somebody that you feel like is a top 15 guy.
Well, I don't know. The way things are going, is Bosch a top 15 guy?
He might not be.
Yeah. I
mean, I'd personally rather have Luis Scola at the price he's at than Bosch for 2.5 times more.
Scola is ridiculous.
But there are trades out there.
I actually thought your guy might have overextended for a guy who might be older than we think. But man, since the World Championship started, does he look good?
What about Cleveland? If Cleveland said, we'll give you Verjao and Mo Williams for Bosch.
Why would Cleveland do that?
Oh, interesting. You don't think Cleveland would do that? What do you think, Steiny Mo?
I don't think it's enough. But yeah, I mean, I see what House is saying here. I mean, Bosch's value is going to be hurt by what we've seen so far.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about where he's going to be in your trade value column this year.
Oh, he's not going to be on it. How about that?
Wait a second.
He's not going to be in the top 40. You crazy?
Hold on a second. Well, he does have a max contract.
I don't think he has a ton of value. I think he has value, but I don't think would you rather have Bosch at $110 million or would you rather have David Lee at $80?
Right, I know that's a no-brainer.
I'd rather have David Lee.
Another reason why Bucher's not on here because he would not say David Lee.
Yeah, Bucher, well, actually, the Warriors now have fallen back to 500, so he might be vindicated on that after all. House, I meant to tell you this. I heard the greatest idea ever for a fantasy draft that my friend Chen is in. The draft is It's the actual salaries of the players, and you all have $65 million to spend, and they do it round by round.
Wow.
So the number one pick was Stephen Curry because he makes $3.7 million.
Let's do that draft tomorrow.
It's the best draft I ever heard.
I love that draft.
And he said because it's only $65 million right now, Kobe's on the waiver wire because nobody can afford him. How have we not done this draft?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
So you just put your whole team's guys on the rookie scale? I mean,
well, he was excited because he'd picked up, I forget who it was, Aminu. And Aminu's getting a lot of minutes, and he's only $3 million. So Aminu's a great guy to have in this league. But I thought it was cool. We got to investigate this.
But what if you're willing to pay luxury tax?
Well, that's what I think we get a luxury tax in, and maybe that you have to throw that money into the pot if you go over the luxury tax. I mean, this really sounds like this could be the greatest league of all time. Steiny Mo, make the MVP campaign for Dirk Nowitzki.
The problem is if he has to keep carrying the load he's carrying right now, we won't see him in April. I mean, he's playing spectacular, but this team is hard to watch right now, is putting it kindly. I mean, they're winning games with D. If Jason Terry has an off night, they're in huge trouble because, so half the time they're playing 2-on-5 offensively.
Yeah, that's not.
Dirk is playing. I think people are wondering, okay, are we going to start to see some slippage? We start to see some age.
Well, Steiny, I know Simmons proposed getting the band back together with Steve Nash. What obstacles are there to Gilbert going to Dallas and just swapping the whole Washington team from last year with Dallas?
There's a little thing I like to call 3 years and 60-something million left on his deal after this season.
But Mark Cuban's the mega billionaire.
Yeah, he doesn't care.
And after their last trade with Washington, when Deshaun Stevenson has been their most productive player this season out of the three they got, I don't know that Ernie Grunfeld's going to be their first call.
When is Caron Butler going to be arrested during a game for stealing money from Mark Cuban? I think that would be awesome.
You know what?
Third quarter.
I do think one thing you have to say in his defense is, I'm sure if I'm him, he wants more touches. He wants, more plays run for him. And I'm sure his defense is, well, everything on this team is run for Dirk and Jason Terry, so how am I supposed to be effective? But, I only buy that to a small degree because, when he does get the ball, it's just too many jumpers. The aggression that made him so good and that, Kobe loved him and, this rim attacking guy. We haven't seen that guy.
And he's also...
In 2 years.
He's a ball stopper, as House can attest.
No, that's true. And that's
it.
Ball stops. He's the same thing with Corey Maggette, and that's why, House, when you and I did the NBA over-unders, and I went under on the Bucks, and you went over, and that was one of the three we disagreed on.
Yeah.
My reason was Corey Maggette. I just think he kills basketball teams because the ball goes to him and it stops. And all he wants to do is put up his own stats.
Salmons is like that too, and he was so good there. When they got him, I was like, why is everybody so excited about this? But he was great for them.
I know, but he's playing for a contract.
Maybe.
And also they have guys who got paid. You don't want guys after they got paid. You want guys who are trying to get paid. And I think, I think Brendan Haywood's another example of that. Brendan Haywood got paid. You saw a good side of him last year because he was playing hard. The thing with Dirk, though. I do think he's a top 3 MVP candidate right now because we saw it in that Chicago game, and you emailed me, Steiny Mo, that Thibodeau was just like, all right, Dirk, you're not beating us. You pick one of your other teammates, and you can have that guy beat us, but you specifically are not going to beat us. And he took them out of the game, and they lost. Well, isn't every team just going to do that to them now, every good team?
I think every team's trying, and that's the thing. He's still, last night, He missed a few more free throws. That's the weird thing. His free throwing has been off to the point where they got a tee last night and Jason Terry shot it instead of him.
Wow, no.
And off for him is, he's still shooting about 85% from the line, but he missed 3 more last night, and he was at 83% coming into the game last night.
Do you think the team's been affected by Shawn Marion's tragic death?
There's no question that there is a high amount of frustration at how hard it is for this team to score. This is a problem that the Mavs are not used to having.
Well, wouldn't you say I would say the top 3 most likely candidates for a trade in some order are Sacramento, Detroit, and Dallas, right?
Well, Dallas and Houston are always going to be there because
Houston,
their guys are always, trying to make something happen. And look, the math, it's very clear. I've said it a million times. Everybody is sick of me saying it. Dirk has not played with a guy at his level since Nash left. And the Nash who left isn't the Nash that we've seen in Phoenix anyway. So
is that an HGH comment? You just broke news.
Always throwing HGH into the mix.
You just broke news in the BS report. Nash is cheating. Wait. Speaking of Nash, what are the odds that he can come back? 0?
Just come back to Dallas?
Yeah.
I mean, I would. First of all, look. The Suns absolutely, positively do not want to trade him. I mean, Steve Nash is their walking business viability.
I know, but they already sold.
If they come to the point that they say, you know what, we've got to rebuild, we've got to cash in on Nash while we can still get a lot for him, I have to think Dallas is the last place they call. There is a level of tension between the teams. Obviously, the way Steve left, I cannot see Sarver trading him back here. I mean,
good. So he can go to the Knicks. That's where I want to see him.
No, I don't want him to go.
You know what? They might be tied for Dallas on the last teams you want to call because I don't think they want to hand him back to D'Antoni either. So,
well, the Spurs, and I was all excited for some sort of a Nash Parker swap, and then somebody on Twitter pointed out Parker's only 28. Feels like he's like 35. He's been around forever, but he's only 28 years old. Nash is 37. So regardless of what may have happened in San Antonio with Parker behind the scenes, I don't think you make that trade. I think the logical destination is Orlando, which I think would be great for Nash and kind of fits the whole bill for him that he could potentially win a title there. And then you think, like, well, they have Haydu too. They have Jason Richardson expiring contract. You can put together the pieces of a mega trade that actually makes sense for Phoenix.
And we would certainly change our collective opinion about Orlando if Nash showed up.
Well, and don't you think, like, as a Celtics fan, that's the scenario that, and I wrote this yesterday in my chat, that's the scenario that frightens the hell out of me. If Nash says, you know what, I'm 37 years old, I want to play in the finals, it's not going to happen here, no hard feelings, but I want to be traded somewhere else to a contender, please accommodate me. And Orlando is the logical move. And as a Celtics fan, that's terrifying.
I mean, I just still don't see it as even a conversation till summer at the soonest.
Because he's Canadian?
No, just because I just think Phoenix cannot bear the thought of trading him away.
I think you're better off trading your star during the season because you've already sold your tickets. If I were them, I would rather do it now than do it in July when I'm trying to sell my seasons. You know?
Yeah. What's the first mega trade, Steiny?
Peja doesn't count?
No. What'd you think of that trade? I kind of liked it for the Hornets just because I think Jack's a real third guard, and I don't think Bayless was. They're trying to win a title.
Well, on one hand, when you hear how close Jack is to Chris Paul, and I'm told that this is literally one of his 3 best friends in the league,
yeah,
and the fact that he makes them better, and not only as a backup, but is a better fit next to Chris Paul. And you hear that the Bayless thing wasn't working out at all, and he really wasn't fitting in there, and maybe the only kind of chemistry drag on a team that had the best start in the league. It all makes sense, but then immediately you have to remind yourself that all we heard last year was Jarrett Jack went to Georgia Tech with Chris Bosh, and these guys are super tight, and this could help Toronto keep Chris Bosh.
Yeah, but you know who's saying that, though? Brian Colangelo. Bosh was out. Like, that was, like, to me, that was, like, their last desperation move. It was like, hey, look, we signed one of your buddies. It would be like if I wanted to leave ESPN and ESPN was like, hey, we signed House. I'd be like, all right, I'm still going to leave. I mean, I'm happy for House. You paid him, right? But I'm still going to go. It's not like I can't talk to him by phone and email.
You would leave House in a heartbeat, wouldn't you?
Well, it's not like we couldn't hang out anyway. Before. It's like that's the part I don't get. It's not, it's not like Bosh is going to stop being friends with Jared Jack because he's in Miami now.
Well, I'm inclined to believe, even though we just watched this not happen in Toronto, that it is going to be a factor in New Orleans. Because
it made them better. I mean, that's going to be the biggest factor is that he is somebody now that could be the third guard on a team that contends for the finals.
Well, the thing I would say, Dell Demps is one of the many San Antonio proteges, but he's probably one that people didn't know a lot about. He certainly hasn't had the hype of a Presti or a Ferry, but this guy, he worked with the Spurs for 5 years. He ran their D-League team while he was in the Spurs front office. I mean, he quietly got a lot of experience, and he's gotten this job, and you see how aggressive he is. I mean, he's been incredibly aggressive. He's already made, I think, 5 trades, and, I think Chris Paul's taken note of that.
You know what else, House?
What?
Steinemo dumped Dork Elvis for Demps. He did. They have they go back 20 years.
Like you could even like you would even let me near Dork Elvis. I only see him in March at the Sloan conference.
I've given you some Dork Elvis. I've given you a couple tastes. Here's the thing. I think Demps has risen to the top of my GM power rankings.
Oh.
When are you writing that column? It's a natural.
That actually would be
a natural follow to the old GM summit. I mean,
I should write that column, but it would just be a tough one for me and Daryl because the Rockets are 3-10. I think
put him at 17 and test the bounds of your friendship.
He'd be so upset. I will say though that Presti. I'm glad I thought of Presti here. Explain the Nick Collison contract to me.
The Nick Collison contract is one of the craziest ones I've seen. Actually, though, I didn't even realize this until someone smarter than me pointed this out. House's Wizards did this with Blatch.
Yeah.
But the jump wasn't that extreme. But basically, this is how it works. If you're a team with cap room, and you go into a season and you still have cap room left over, you can give all that cap room to someone as a signing bonus and an extension. Usually that's spread out over the life of a contract, but what the Thunder did was say, okay, we've got $6.5 million of cap space we didn't use in the summer. We're going to give that all to Collison now, and in exchange, Collison is going to take a 4-year extension at a ridiculously low number. So the 4-year extension is only worth $11 million, and it's down to like 2.2 in the 4th year. But Collison gets a $6.5 million signing bonus, and as of today is now listed as a $13.3 million player this season because you add the $6.5 million signing bonus to his $6.675 salary for this year. So Nick Collison making all-star money in 2010-11.
So it's a 4-year deal, 4-year extension for like $18 million.
Right.
But they pay him $6 million before year one.
Right.
And then it gets spread out. Now, Housey, I played a good one on Steinemo last night. I emailed him and I'm like, you left out one part of your Nick Collison column. And then he emails me back, what was it? Like all concerned. I'm like, that he sucks. That was my response.
Well, that's it. I
was like, he stinks. I like Nick Collison. He's a good 11th man, but you don't extend him. You don't waste your game's pass.
Man. He's more than an 11th man to that.
He is?
I mean, yes.
Irrespective of the extension, I guess I can get the logic of extending him, the contribution he makes chemistry-wise and so forth.
Yeah,
why did he get all $6.5 million?
Yeah, I wouldn't have done that.
To give away.
And
why did they give all that to him?
I have another question. Was Nick Collison turning that deal down in March?
Well,
why not just wait and make sure you don't need the cap space? Why do it now?
That point I agree with, but you could even make the case that, why wouldn't you keep the cap room then all the way till June 30th? I mean, there's no question if there's an eyebrow-raising part of this, it's do you really want to burn all your cap space now just in case something crazy comes up that you would have needed? But we've seen the Thunder, and no matter how many times you get on your pod and rant for them to go get Kurt Thomas or some veteran big, they're not going to do it. So, they might as well do this if it locks in Collison. I mean, Collison in that 4th year is going to be making $2 million. That
which is about $1 million more than he should make. Let me ask you this. Well, actually, in their defense, he is young and he hasn't. Oh wait, he's 30. I can't. I mean, really, just sign Brian Cook for $1 million.
Brian Cook.
Well, is there a difference? Why, House, help me out here.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't paid attention at all to Nick Collison's stats this year, and all I can do is make nebulous references to the contribution he makes to that team. I mean, does he even play 18 minutes a game?
I mean, look, I
thought he was a rotation guy.
He's obviously a bench player, but he's a big off the bench that they want for depth. And, the 4 years going forward, which they're balancing that against, okay, when we're paying Durant's extension and the Westbrook extension and whoever else we have to extend, are we going to be glad we have Collison on this roster at a low number? They believe yes, and I'm inclined to agree with them. I mean, there's no question giving him all the cap space and a $6.5 million signing bonus is, that is the head-scratching part of this. But
I just want to say that I like Nick Collison, and he would have a place on my team. I just don't see any reason to lock him up and waste all my cap space when there might be some team that has to panic in February because they're getting killed in revenue or they're over the tax or something. Like you look at last year when they got that Eric Maynard trade, when he kind of fell into their laps because they had the cap space. I'd much rather keep that option open than lock down 30-year-old Nick Collison. I'm looking at his stats right now. So, House, to answer your question, he plays 20 minutes a game for them.
Congratulations.
And he's averaging 4.5 points and 4 rebounds. So that would have been tough to replace, I guess. You're averaging a point and a rebound every 5 minutes. I don't know where else they get that.
You cannot put a price on intangibles.
Nobody's a bigger intangibles guy than me, but enough with the intangibles. Get somebody who can rebound. When Serge Ibaka is the only guy who protected the rim and rebounding for you, you got to figure it out. And I thought Cole Aldridge was going to be good for them, and they just sent him to the D-League. So, what do you think, House?
So Presti is not in the top 10 anymore in your future GM power rankings column.
He's absolutely in the top 10, but I made this point in the column last week. House, I would love your opinion on this. Durant is a top 3 player.
Yep.
Russell Westbrook now, clearly a top 15 player and one of the best guards in the league. Aren't they a contender right now? What are they waiting for?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that point, and I think that they should be out beating the bushes. Steiny, you said that they're just not going to go get a veteran big guy, and I wanted to leap through the phone and shout, why? Why not? The window is now.
No matter how many times you put that question to them, you get the same rehearsed speech about not skipping steps, and we want to develop our young guys and make sure that they're the ones that get the reps. I mean, I'm with you. I mean, look, we've all said number 2 in the West is wide open. If they want to go out and claim number 2 in the West, they do need a better front line, and they do need you have to have some veteran know-how.
I'm going to throw some of my...
Young does not win in the NBA. It just doesn't.
No.
And I also really reject the idea that this building concept. What are they building for?
They already built it. They have 2 of the top 15 players. You built it. The house is done.
It's built.
Well, here's the other thing. There's a great historical analogy to this, in my opinion. The 95 Magic, a team that nobody thought would contend for a title, a team that everybody was like, oh, well, wait till a couple years from now when Penny and Shaq, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? They were ready, and they made the finals, and they ended up getting swept by Houston. But and that was a team that had Horace Grant, Brian Shaw. They had some veterans. This team doesn't. But it's just there's a precedent for being precocious but still being able to win a championship or at least compete for one.
Well, look, they have plenty of assets otherwise to make moves, too. I mean, it's not like they only needed cap space to do something. They can still make a move after giving Collison this deal. So, yes, I agree with you. I would love to see, some sort of Marcus Camby-esque guy who you add to this mix of kids. Cause
they already had a chance to get him.
Right.
They
and
passed.
They do need it. I totally believe they need it, and I've told them that, and they vehemently disagree.
Oh, don't tell Demps you told them that. Demps is your guy now.
All the Spurs alumni, I'm friendly with all of them. No prejudices against anybody.
House.
Yep.
Chicago calls Denver. Oh, no. Denver calls Chicago, and they say, we're going to trade you Carmelo, but we want Luol Deng, Taj Gibson, and a number 1 pick this year, and then in 2013, and we also want $3 million. Does Chicago say yes to that?
I don't know if Chicago does, but I would say no.
You would say no?
I would say no. It sounds
what would
like
you say, Steinemo?
Cosign, no.
Now,
bear in mind, I just saw Taj Gibson's best game that he ever played, including his first 3-pointer since he was about 8 years old. But
I would say no as well.
He and Noah together are just, they cover so much ground.
Yeah.
And the whole Thibodeau defensive thing is based on, mobile big men. If Thibodeau's your coach, you need both of those guys.
I agree, and I also don't know if Carmelo plus Thibodeau equals happiness. So,
well,
that's the thing with Boozer and Rose. Like, I don't think they need Melo's offense.
I agree with that.
That's the thing. Chicago's looking as good as it does without even Boozer, and Boozer's gonna make a lot of guys on that team. He's gonna make their lives easier offensively when he gets back.
So basically, it's New Jersey. That's the only option.
Well, that's the only known option. I still think that, like I wrote at the weekend, there's going to be these teams that are willing to gamble on a Carmelo rental, and who's to say that?
But who? Who are the teams?
Well, Dallas and Houston are two. I think Orlando is on that list for sure. Now you're telling me Houston, with the assets that it has, can't rope in a third team and put together an offer that might be able to trump what New Jersey's offering?
I wouldn't do it now. They're 3-10. I think that ship sailed.
Well, I think they're trying. I mean, I don't think our friend Darryl ever puts the phone down. But Denver doesn't want to deal with Melo right now. I mean, they want to wait till December 15th at the soonest, when all the free agents from last summer become eligible to be traded, and that increases the options. But I mean, they're still clinging to this. Let's drag this out and see if we can change Carmelo's mind.
I think that's a good strategy, too.
Yeah, I agree with that. But if you're Dallas, what do you have other than the French guy who's been hurt for 5 months?
You would need a third team to provide good future draft compensation, because you got Caron Butler's expiring contract, you got Deshaun Stevenson's expiring contract. You would have to give up Beaubois. It's not enough. I mean, there's got to be a third team in there that gives Denver more of what it wants. But
I have an idea. I want to throw this idea at you because I just thought of it. So you trade Beaubois and Butler for Melo, along with $3 million. Then you trade Jason Kidd and $3 million for Chauncey Billups. Then you trade Deshaun Stevenson's expiring contract for one of their things, and you basically you make 5 individual trades and give them $15 million. Plus all the assets. Is that legal? Could that work? I feel like that's legal.
You lost me at the second part of your 8-part trade.
So you're basically
you really need to go in that fantasy league with the salary limits so you kind of get back in check.
I'm saying you're basically
you're out of control, and we haven't even hit December 1 yet.
You're making a 10-player trade where you're taking a bunch of money back and giving them assets and expiring contract, but you're just breaking it up into parts, and in each part you give them $3 million in the trade.
Oh, that's the point of breaking up in parts. The cash is still the cash.
If it's coming from different teams.
No, it could come from Dallas, because if it's 5 separate trades, in each one of those trades they could include $3 million.
I can't answer a question like this without Larry Kuhn consultation.
Why couldn't they just give them $15 million? Why do they have to break it up?
You can't. It's got to be $3 million. That's the max.
Oh, that's the max. Okay. Well,
if they were all happening, there's some sort of simultaneous trade rule that I'm sure would block what you're suggesting, but I would never dare even pretend to say that I could answer that kind of question without Larry Kuhn input.
Most surprising guy who's probably available in a trade, I would say, is O.J. Mayo, correct?
Well, I mean, I don't know if we should be that surprised, because remember, he was offered to Golden State last year. People were stunned that and I was among them.
Me too.
That Golden State would turn down Mayo and Thabit for Monte Ellis, because Mayo physically is a better match for Steph Curry than Ellis is.
Yep.
I mean, Mayo is the kind of guy you want next to Steph Curry, a physical guard who can handle the ball. And then at that point, as bad as Thabit was, I still would have taken a gamble on it. I mean, the guy was the number 2 overall pick, for a guy that had what looked like a bad contract. But then Ellis shows up this year and has been so good. I mean, Golden State wouldn't do that deal. They didn't do it They didn't do it in the spring. I mean, there's no way they would even consider it now.
Well, why did they say no?
I don't know. I mean, I have to believe Monte's popularity was a factor in it, because Monte really is hugely connected with Warriors fans. They love him there. Was the franchise uncertainty? I mean, the sale was in the early stages. I mean, there were still multiple bidders at that point. Was that a factor? And the Warriors just felt
I think that's what it was.
That makes sense.
We can't really make a move of that stature, but I mean, you would have done that in February, wouldn't you?
Immediately, of course.
I think I called house and we laughed that they didn't do it. But now, the way Monta's playing, I'd probably
you
still
can get
consider
more for him.
You get a little more for him now, but
contract isn't unreasonable. I mean, he makes like a flat 11 every year. I mean, it's not unlivable or anything.
I mean, I'd think about it, but I'd need a little more now from Memphis. But I think Mayo is undervalued. Like, that's somebody. I think he's at the point that maybe Kevin Love was this summer and nobody was able to steal him. I think Mayo on the right team could be really good because he's a good defensive player. Is the part that because we all think of these guys in fantasy terms and what are their stats and stuff like that. But I think Mayo's a really good all-around player.
Oh, he's been terrible shooting the ball this year.
Terrible. I know. He's in a slump. But
and back to your Mavs, I mean, that's the kind of guy that they need, Monte Ellis. I mean, they need someone who can create his own shot. And again, there's a lot of teams right now who would love Monte Ellis.
Like Gilbert Arenas.
Yeah, oh, God, poor House. House, just accept that Orlando is your only chance.
Why is Utah no longer in the running?
Come on, that is not a Utah move.
Jerry Sloan and Gil Arenas?
No way.
They could get along.
They couldn't make it through one shoot-around.
At some point, Orlando's going to say, they're going to call Washington, they're going to say, you know what, we've thought about it, and we'll give you Rashard Lewis for Gilbert Arenas. And Washington will say...
I hate to admit this, but I think you might be onto something there. I mean, that one does make some sense.
No, then Washington's counter is going to be, no, we don't want to do that, but we will do it if you give us Vince Carter.
No, Washington has no counter. The first team that says, we will give you this, and even if the money's the same, they got to do it.
House, would you do that trade?
I guess, are they identical in terms of the duration of the contracts?
Pretty much, yeah.
Well, then I'd rather just have Gilbert. I would say no to that trade.
What if Orlando threw in 3 boxes of HGH?
You would rather have Gilbert than Rashard Lewis?
Yes, yeah. Gilbert's not, he is in the process of rehabilitating his reputation and his character and all that kind of stuff here. And he's fitting in well enough with the team. He's playing a little bit of a mentor role.
Ted Leon says, thanks for joining us on the BS Report.
Nick Young interrupted interview that Gilbert was giving last night to thank him for putting him in position to make that game-winning shot against the Sixers. I'm telling you, they all love Gil.
I'm leaning toward agreeing to House here. I would not take – I actually think Rashard Lewis is more untradeable than Gilbert. I think Rashard Lewis, to me, is a guy like – it almost seems like he's on his way out of the league. And the key with him is that he's a high school guy. And we saw it with Jermaine O'Neal with the high school and T-Mac. When the high school guys lose it, it's gone. It doesn't come back, and this guy hasn't been good in 2 years.
I don't know. I just think no. I would still do it. This is John Wall's team. It's time for everybody to move on, and they can't move on if he stays there.
Okay, so what if Washington says no? We want Vince. I do that if I'm Orlando because I'm not winning anything with Vince. And they're so far over the cap that when Vince leaves, it's not like they can sign a free agent.
Their payroll's already ridiculous, and now you want them to take on 3 more years of Gil money?
Well, their window is now, isn't it? Do they think they can win with this team that that's putting out on the court every night?
And when does Dwight Howard's contract end?
Adding Gil to the Magic is not like adding Nash to the Magic. I mean, is it automatic that they become, appreciably better? I mean, I don't think it's a guarantee by any stretch.
Well, they need to do something.
Fair point.
They need at the very least they need to explore some sort of Jameer plus Vince type of deal where they're getting pieces back.
Well, I'm sure they're also holding out that they're praying that if Chris Paul ever does shake loose, that they're going to be the team that can get Chris Paul. I mean, they're not going to burn Vince on a deal for Arenas until they've been convinced 100% that New Orleans wouldn't move Chris Paul. Let
me ask you, when you and Demps are getting massages together, does he ever talk about how concerned he is about Chris Paul?
No.
Because I went to Monday's house. I haven't talked to you. I went to Monday's Hornets-Clipper game.
Oh, that was a good game.
It was an awesome game. And actually, Dave Jacoby was there. and said it was one of the 3 best basketball fan experiences he's ever had. It was an actual quote from Dave Jacoby, who goes to basketball games.
He's a hoops head, of course.
Here's what worried me about the Hornets. A couple things. Chris Paul had a big knee brace on.
Ooh.
It was much bigger than I expected, and it was one of those knee braces that had big, long metal things on each side.
It was one of those metal ones.
Yeah.
I don't like
it was
those.
like...
It was a Dave Randy knee brace.
Yeah, it was the guy in pickup who completely blew out his knee 3 years ago, and now he's coming back, knee brace.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, it really, because they were in a back-to-back, it really seems like they had told him, you can't go all out in this game. We're going to manage your minutes. Like it was a tight game in the fourth quarter. They didn't bring him back to like 5 minutes left.
Wow.
He wasn't driving to the basket really at all in the last 3 quarters, and he looked a little gimpy. And granted, I just saw him in person. It was a back-to-back. He might have gotten tweaked the night before, but he didn't look 100% healthy to me. And when you think like he's already been operated on, Steiny Mo, you heard anything?
Well, I actually talked about this with him about a week ago, and he did say and kind of surprised me that there were points in the summer that he was worried that his knee was never going to be the same, and that did catch me off guard. I never thought it was that bad, and then when I saw him in person, I had the same exact reaction as you did, like, man, that brace is humongous.
Yeah,
this thing looks like a scaled-down replica of some sort of wrestling cage match thing. I mean, it's
well,
big, but he says, it's not permanent. It's not something he has to wear permanent. And, let's be honest, if we're going to have any kind of MVP discussion after 15 games, as much as I would love to pretend that Dirk is number 1 on the list, I think we all know who's number 1 on the list. It's Chris Paul. I mean, he's played fantastic, and I don't think they're super, super concerned about it.
And the team should do exactly what you guys are describing. It sounds like they are doing, which is limit his minutes, pay attention to the back-to-backs, take it easy with him.
And
they
now
lost that game.
So good about this trade now. I mean, Jack can really help them keep his minutes down. That's a good move.
Hold on though. Let's finish that thought. Maybe that was one of the reasons for the trade.
I think it's as much though to have someone who can play next to him too. I mean, like they could play. They will work together at times when they want to go that way and play them together. And I do think the chemistry factor was a big deal too.
I will say that I do like their team, and the weak link in the game that I went to was Ariza was just horrendous. And if his shot's been off all year, and if that doesn't get better, I think that's going to hurt them. But I was impressed by Jason Smith, the guy they got from Philly. I actually thought, somebody that maybe Presti would give a $15 million signing bonus to. It's that caliber. Like, he's definitely better than 4 points, 4 rebounds a game. But it did seem like if it's not West or Paul, then it's hard for them to score. And it reminds me a little bit of Dallas. Like they're pretty predictable in a tight game, and I think that's what's going to bite them. Is there a team that you feel like hasn't really peaked yet that you see coming down the road, maybe in February?
Well, that's the thing is I still don't think there is. If you ask the question, who is the Lakers' biggest threat, I still don't think we have an answer.
I agree.
I mean, the Hornets have forced themselves in the conversation. I know there are some people out there who would say, I still don't quite believe in this. It's just kind of a fluky start. No, I mean, the least they deserve is that we put them in that conversation. And I said coming into the season, and I think the start has backed it up, everybody is off San Antonio. They've very sneakily gotten younger here. They've plugged in these younger guys like Blair and Hill and this Gary Neal. They find some guy off the scrap heap who can, make threes at will.
Yeah.
Splitter's finally back. I mean, they've kind of really replenished their whole supporting cast around the big three, and I still think they worry the Lakers as much as anybody. Dallas could still be in the mix depending on the moves they make. Utah, Oklahoma City. I would have said Portland, but I think with their injuries, you definitely can.
Be careful. They're listening.
Hey,
they're listening. Don't do it, Steiny Mo.
I feel for them deeply, but
I agree with you. I think San Antonio, hands down, is the favorite to be in that Western Finals because they're deep.
But not hands down. I don't think anything's hands down.
Well, I just think if I had to bet on a team, it would be a no-brainer. I would pick them, and I can't even think of a second team I'd pick.
You don't like Utah in that class?
I think they're in the discussion, but to me, this run of comebacks raises as many red flags as it does wow you.
Yeah, sure.
Steinemo made the point, I think his power rankings, it's not good when you keep falling from behind.
Yeah.
And this is the same thing that happened with Oklahoma City. When I'm looking at a team that I like, I want a team that has the lead all the time. I don't want a team that's falling behind by 15, by 20. But that was the Celtics last year. That was the biggest issue they had. It wasn't just that they were losing, it's that they were getting trounced. And I think that's a red flag.
But can we agree how appalling it is that the East, after all these free agents, is such a mess?
Well, it's so top-heavy.
I mean, but it's not even that, because Miami's not even delivering.
Right.
I mean...
Yeah, it's disappointing.
Every year we say, this is the year, the East. The East is back. The gap has been narrowed.
Yeah, I was going to ask why, Simmons, you didn't do the East version of your West preview, post-preview, but...
Because I need to see more of the East. I can't figure it out. There's so many bad teams, and from game to game, it just seems like this team's good, then they're awful. And I don't know what to make of it.
Why is Indiana 7-6?
Because they have talented players.
Who are they?
Granger's good. Hibbert's good. Dunleavy is healthy.
Who?
Mike Dunleavy is healthy, or relatively healthy. He's been playing for him. They have that Collison's been hurt, but for some reason T.J. Ford's been giving him decent minutes. They're not terrible.
None of those guys knocks me out of my seat other than Granger.
I think
Hibbert's one of the best young bigs in the league.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
And you know what? And House and I said this at the time. That was an indefensible draft drop for him. He went about 4 spots later than he should have, because it was clear that worst case scenario he was going to be a really good backup center. You know what I mean? Like that was your worst case scenario, right. Which is great because now you have a backup center who makes $2.5 million a year or whatever. But best case scenario is a guy that you could actually post up. And I don't know. I think he's been. This is the best question of the whole podcast. Who is the starting center of the West in the All-Star game? You know who it is right now? The odds-on favorite?
Al Jefferson.
Emeka Okafor.
It is Emeka Okafor.
I mean, who are the fans going to? The fans aren't going to vote for Okafor.
No, it'll probably be Bynum.
It's going to be Yao.
It could be Yao, but I mean, it's like there's never been a bleaker starting position for an All-Star game than the way. And the best case scenario would be that Yao wins, and then they just make Gasol the starting center.
Yeah, I was just going to say, won't they make it?
That's how it should play out.
They'll make it so that Gasol can be it.
Yeah, Donde took my spot on the ballot committee this year, so I'm not even up to speed yet on my All-Star ballot.
So Donde is the one that I can mail some dog poop for not putting Paul Millsap on there?
All his fault.
It's indefensible.
You know how hard it is to put that ballot together? Believe me.
Please. How hard is it to know Paul Millsap should be on it?
Every year, it was a lock. I reserve space in the weekend dime every year. As soon as that ballot comes out, item on who got left off. Done. Money. Then I was on the ballot committee for 2 years in a row. You got to get 3 guys from every team on there. There's always going to be somebody you leave off and regret it, especially because they finish that thing before the season even starts for printing reasons. I mean, look, they need to just change the whole system the way it is. And
you're right. There's no way to know.
Get away from the positions and.
Well, there's no way to know Paul Millsap is going to be good this year.
Definitely not at the point where they put the ballot together.
There's no way to know that with Boozer leaving, that somebody who scored 20 plus every time Boozer got hurt was going to have a good year. I didn't see that coming.
So if there Okur, Jefferson, Kirilenko, and Darren Williams weren't, you wouldn't have had the 4 of them ahead of him on your list of jazzers on the All-Star.
I would have had Millsap first. You agree or am I crazy? We had our fantasy draft. Millsap got the most money out of all those guys,
all
right?
All of Utah is
not ahead of Darren Williams.
Bill Simmons just said he would have had Millsap over Darren Williams on his All-Star.
No, not over Darren Williams.
Attention, Utah.
I'm talking about the front court guys.
Over Al and Kirilenko.
I still don't have him over Al.
Yeah, Al might have been. He's neck and neck with Al at least. I think Al's been really disappointed though. And I wonder now.
It's early.
I know it's early, but I wonder, can you just be on too many losing teams? Because I'm seeing the same thing with Gomes. Because Gomes has been terrible for the Clippers.
But the thing about Al and so many people said, oh, he's just going to snap right into Utah's offense.
Nope.
He's not a pick-and-roll guy.
Yeah.
I mean, Boozer and Darren Williams were just pick-and-roll, you know, they were like Aquaman with the telepathy. I mean, it's just not the same.
No, he's a post-up guy. Well, maybe it's the wrong team for him. At the very least, they can flip him if it comes to that. Find another.
I don't know.
team
His
for him.
contract isn't so flippable.
What about Karolinko? Does he stay there? Because he's one of the big trade chip pieces out there.
I mean, look, that trade, the Melo trade, I mean, which he was in, was really close to going down. But in the end, you know, one of the main things that spiked it was the fact that even though he is expiring, his number is so big that, you know, the Nuggets didn't want to take him on because it was going to cost them extra tax dollars. In season now, you know, that was before the season. You know, in season, I don't get the sense that the Jazz really want to make that kind of huge change. And again, I think all these teams have to weigh, is a trade really going to get us closer to the Lakers? I mean, what trade can Utah make that really puts them into the Lakers zip code?
Well, they do have to worry a little bit. They're in a similar situation with the Hornets with Chris Paul with Darren Williams, though. You don't want to not be a contender.
No, that's true. And
they need a shooting guard.
Yeah. They have the worst shooting guards in the league, and the irony of that Wes Matthews contract, which I still say was terrible, but it did work, and they didn't match it, and now Brandon Roy's hurt, and that contract looks great, and that really hurt. He really would have, you know, the drop-off from him to the guys that they have is significant.
Well, I mean, you cannot blame Utah for not matching that thing.
I can't.
That thing was, you know, monstrous for a guy off your bench, but
I don't blame them for it.
It just shows you the crazy money that Portland still has, because wasn't the year that Matthews got drafted, they had like multiple second-round picks. They could have just taken him.
Yeah.
And then a year later, they turn around and just say, all right.
I like him. The soccer moms tipped me off on him in training camp, and I have him in our fantasy draft, and he's been, now that he's getting playing time, he's good. But I do like him, and I think the Raja Bell-CJ Miles combo is not cutting it. So
you don't like that?
I will not let you speak ill of Raja Bell on a podcast that I participate in. So.
Well, unfortunately, Raja is the same age as you. You're not going to beat the Lakers this year with that team. And I was surprised by how well the Barnes-Blake combo has fit in with the Lakers. Because I thought Barnes was done. Pierce used him in the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and Shannon Brown's better than both of them now.
Yeah, and Shannon Brown, you know, and that guy, the Lakers have been lucky with some stuff, and that guy was a throw-in with that stupid trade they made. What was the trade? Adam Morrison and
yeah.
But who did they give up though? I can't remember.
Vladimir Radmanovich.
God, that was a terrible trade. Charlotte's just they're terrible. All right, did we miss it? We hit everything? We're good, right?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean, we just did an in-depth analysis of Utah.
Finals pick has to be Boston Lakers. No other alternatives right now?
It is hard for me to argue. I said Lakers, Miami coming into the season, and I never back off my picks. I take my medicine, but
House?
The Heat have a few steps to go before they get back in that conversation.
You and I had a chance to chat sometime in the last 3 weeks. I said that, and I haven't seen any reason to change my mind about that.
One last thing for you guys. So we're doing this show, The Association, again, with NBA Films and NBA Entertainment and ESPN Films, they did it with the Lakers last year, but it was more of like a movie. This is going to be 5 shows, a little hard-knocksy.
Oh, cool.
And they're doing the Celtics, and I really think it's going to be great. Because so many the Celtics are a reality show. Every guy in that team is interesting.
They better borrow Joe Meade's bleep button. You know what, though? I mean, no question. The most fun I've had in a locker room so far this season, before the Celtics played the Mavs a couple Mondays ago, with all those guys, Pierce, Allen, Shaq, they are all these opinionated guys just blasting each other. Absolute comedy. And it's funny because Garnett even says, Garnett likes to be so locked in before the game and, bash his head against the basket standard. And these guys are just causing such a ruckus. Like he's like forcing himself to leave so he doesn't get caught up in it all. Yeah,
their spirit of that team was so far down last year with Rasheed, who was he just crushed them in so many ways. And then I think Nate's really helped. And I think, and Shaq, I had no idea that Shaq and KG were close. Did you know that? before the trade or no?
I mean, a little bit. I mean, I definitely knew that they, all-star games, and it was, they definitely, you could tell they had a little bit of a vibe going. But I also think it's not just that. I just think in, Shaq in year one especially, he's got a lot to prove. He doesn't know anybody. He's trying to fit in.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, I agree with you that people didn't realize that they are two friends, and he does keep KG looser than just about anybody. But you do kind of hear KG say stuff like, "I don't want to be loose." Now, is he just saying that, or is that the truth? I don't really know.
Well, I think it's impossible for Shaq to poison this team because there's so many veterans in place and also he's not making enough money. It's like they could just cut him at any time, and he's not going to be able to undermine.
And you know what?
Rivers.
Whether Garnett likes it or not, it can't hurt him to be a little looser on occasion. I mean, he's just wound up too tight for a 100-game season. So
I have to say, he's been the number one surprise for me this season. I feel like he's 93% back to where he was in the second half of the 2008 season, the title run. And I just thought that ship had sailed. House?
Yeah, I mean, his knees, maybe it's because of all the support and the release that he has, His role is different, and it's having both a psychological and a physical impact on his game.
I'll tell you one thing. He owns Chris Bosh. And you can look up the stats, too, going back to Minnesota. Like, that's a guy that Chris Bosh just doesn't do well against, and Garnett knows it.
And Bosh has the whole Shaq history, so...
Yeah, that's true.
They have prime getting in his head fodder.
Delonte came back, and Rondo got hurt in that Oklahoma City game. Every loss they've had has been understandable. They've lost 4 games, but all of them have been in the last minute. Nobody's really blown them out yet, but I think... When Rondo comes back, the Delonte's just playing great. Like, he's at that 2008 level. I don't know what happened to him the last 2 years, but they've never had a two-guard. Like, that was Tony Allen's position last year. And they're just deep. Like, last year's team was old and dispirited, and KG had the knee thing, and it was just off. And this team feels a lot like the Lakers team. I think
it's tough. I agree absolutely with the comparing them to the Lakers, but it's tough to say that they were off last season. They had the lead in the fourth quarter of Game 7 of the finals.
I was talking about regular season because they lost 16 times at home.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what were they, like 25 and 23 in their last 48 games? I mean, this team is not built. And I also think, definitely Pierce was banged up last year. He looks better. So you'd worry about their age, except that you remember that this is the NBA, and, young doesn't win. I mean, it just doesn't.
Yeah. And
did you hear that, Oklahoma City?
The secret thing that really helped them, too, was getting Lawrence Frank, because Thibodeau did a lot for that team. And that was, Doc is, I think, a motivator and a guy an offensive play guy and a guy who deals with the media, but they do need that nuts and bolts guy. And Lawrence Frank is overqualified to be an assistant. Like, that guy should be a head coach. I'm watching Vinny Del Negro in the Clippers. He should not be a head coach. Lawrence Frank is a better coach than Vinny Del Negro.
It's interesting, though, bringing up your guy Thibodeau. He was offered that Hornets job.
Yeah.
Didn't take it, and it's clear that Chicago is a great fit for him. I mean, he really fits in well there. It was kind of funny how the Hornets have taken off, too.
Right, and then you see that Monty Williams. I mean, he really looks like a player who's injured. He looks like he's about 30. You see him as he's the most unlikely-looking coach out of any coach that we have.
Well, and I think that's another reason why Chris is playing well, that even though they offer that job to Thibodeau first, like Monty Williams and Chris Paul have struck up a pretty good connection right away.
Yeah. Last thing for you, Steiny Mo, and House is on this because we were talking about it last night. It's a deep, and very talented college year. You might have to watch a little because I think this is going to be a good draft. Don't you think, House?
Yeah, I've been really impressed with the games that we've seen in these early season tournaments so far. The level of play has been high. Yeah. The level of execution, it's been a markedly different college basketball, sort of season than what I've grown accustomed to over the last 10 years.
This is why you have no time for Tottenham, because you're using what little spare time you have on college basketball.
I watched the Arsenal game.
Chad Ford's got it covered. Andy Katz has it covered. In May and June, when I need to know, they'll tell me everything I need to know.
That was my favorite tweet of 2010. Chad Ford tweeting that he was sitting next to Tony Ronzone and how excited they were about Darko. I loved it.
They called it.
You know what? 7 years late, but the guy, he's my starting center on my fantasy team, so maybe they were right all along. Fellas, an enjoyable three-man pod, as always. We did this in the honor of the late Rick Bucher, who refuses to get a landline. Talk to you soon.
See ya.
See ya.
So I get to sign off. Whoa!
Thank you for downloading the BS Report with Bill Simmons.
Too much fun.
Check out more podcasts at the iTunes Music Store or at Pod Center at ESPNRadio.com.
Peace out.
That concludes another episode of the BS Report, and we leave you with this final thought. Subway Restaurants is cheering on Jared. As if losing almost 250 pounds wasn't enough, Jared has run 552 miles training for the 2010 ING New York City Marathon. He fuels his training with the low-fat Subway Club. So now, to celebrate this landmark achievement, the Subway Club is the newest $5 footlong sub. For a limited time,